All right, good afternoon, everybody, or just barely noon, and welcome to this month's Georgia Healthy Farmer Mindset meeting. And as always, we record these meetings and then post them later on our website, gafarmstress.org. I'm hosting this today from the Sunbelt Ag Expo. So the folks at the Ag Expo were gracious enough to loan me an office to do this from. So I appreciate that. I am doing it from my phone, so hopefully the internet will stay connected and everything. But just really appreciate everybody being here, and I know we'll have some more folks joining us as time goes on as well. Today, we're focusing on perspectives from Georgia farmers about stress and mental health. And I'm just so pleased to have our three speakers today. Greg Sykes and Wade McKelvin, who, full disclosure, is my brother. He doesn't claim me, but I claim him. Are both producers down in Bullitt County. And so happy to have them here with us today. I won't read their full biographies because it'd take the whole time up and everything, but they're been leaders in the various organizations that advocate for producers, and so we appreciate their time. And then also we have Nicole Gonson from North Georgia. And I met Nicole at a young farmers meeting up in Walker County, and just graduated this past spring with her counseling degree from UTC, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about her work, but also is a just getting started producer. And we know that first generation farmers, new farmers, have a lot of times they have some special challenges as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg, and then we'll go to Wade, and then Nicole will wrap us up. And we'll definitely have time for questions and discussion. And we hope that if you do have questions for our producers today, I know they would love to hear them. So, Greg, would you get us started, please?
I will. Again, like John said, thank you for having me. I'm Greg Sykes from Brooklet, Georgia. I grow peanuts, cotton, and corn. And the stress situation in all of agriculture is a pretty serious issue right now. There's several different reasons why. For me, the main concern is our marketing situation. We don't, it's just we're uncertain of what we're going to be able to get out of the crop, and when you're going into something and it looks like it's not going to be, there's no way to get out of it profitable when you're starting. It's just a vicious cycle right this minute. Hopefully things will change in that perspective, but we're having increases in input prices, and then there's no increase in our commodity prices. In fact, they're actually going down on a daily basis, it seems like. But yeah, farmers are just a different breed. We're completely dependent upon the weather, and what perspective, we're going to need rain, or we're going to need sun, or we're going to need, wind. Like last week, we couldn't do anything. It was about to drive me crazy, just being sitting there and can't do anything. You need to be harvesting. Peanuts needed to come out of the ground, but it was rainy and it was nasty, and then we had peanuts that were sitting on top of the dirt that were already dug, and we were worried about those getting rotten, or those sprouting in the hull, or or getting damaged where we couldn't sell them. And, and then the same with the cotton, this cotton, we defoliated a bunch of cotton. It needs to be opening, and rain and defoliated cotton's not a good combination. So, we're stressing about that. And on top of that, we're in the middle of government shutdown. Um, like, I'm right now, I'm the current president of the National Peanut Buying Points Association. And at our peanut buying points, farmers can't sell their peanuts. The way you market peanuts is through the government loan, and you cannot put a peanut in a government loan when the government's closed. So just an added factor on top of everything else. Right now we're in a situation where even if I needed money or I wanted money, I cannot put my peanuts in the government loan. So we're just stuck. We're dead in the water. It's just a challenge in every direction you turn. And I don't I don't see where right now where there's an answer for it, other than, hopefully these trade practices will increase some of our markets and make some of the prices go up. And but yeah, that's my key concern right now is our marketing situation. And but then also in our area, the farming in general, just the real estate aspect of it. Everywhere we turn, land's being developed or sold, and to be held for development. And there's no there's no certainty of what's going to be there to farm next year and what's not going to be there to farm next year, land wise. And the generational situation for landlords. Most of our landlords have owned this land for a long time. Well, when the older generation's passing away, when the younger generation is inheriting it, a lot of the younger generation is not here anymore. They don't live here. They may be in Atlanta, or they may be in Charlotte, or they may be in New York, or somewhere away from here, and they have no ties to it. So they don't, they want to sell it. And there's just the prices in this area. It's not feasible for agriculture to be able to purchase it and farm your way out of it. So a lot of that land's disappearing for other uses. There's just nothing we can do about that. So there's the uncertainty of that causes added stress. And then like I've mentioned earlier, input prices. John Deere steady going up. I think they had another 5% increase this year, but I don't know what the answer is. But I do know it is a plus to be able to talk to people about it. Our other fellow farmers, and just to be able to, I have good friendly relationships with a lot of my suppliers. We're good friends. We talk regular, and it's a good source to vent. And then just for me, being able to go to church on Sunday, because the good Lord's it's going to be whatever He wants it to be. If He wants me to farm, I'll continue to farm. If He doesn't, I'm sure He'll lead me in the direction He wants me to go to do something else. But I don't see anybody without faith can do this for a living. I just don't see it. I mean, because if it wasn't for my faith, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So that's my saving grace. Is to know that the good Lord's looking after me, and whatever my end result is supposed to be, I know He knows what it is. I don't know what it is, and I just pray that He's going to lead me to do what He wants me to do, and until He sees different for me to do something besides farm, I'm gonna keep farming. So, and I feel sure He'll let me know when that time comes. But no, I'm worried about the younger generation. My son's 20; he farms with me. I'm way more concerned about it for him than I am for me. We, the future's he's got a long way to go, and he's got a bigger challenge ahead of him than I do, and it's just I know those guys, they're seeing the crunch for the first time of these financial situation. He's seeing how tight things are, and to be able to, he's got a lot of buddies that younger that farm, and he gets to talk to them. So I think the chain of friendship around, you can talk to people that you trust and talk to people around, and just vent, because that's all you can do to them, and talk to them and just let them, because most of them are in the same situation you're in. It's not like you're by yourself. And I do feel that it's important, to keep that line of communication open, and let people know what your concerns are and what your problems are and where your stress level is, because it can get pretty tough, you know. And like I say, there's things, it's like spending, you can control a little bit, but some of it you have to spend, but there's really a lot of it that's not under our control, you know. And like I say, the good Lord's gonna do what we need, and I feel confident that he's gonna keep providing for me. He's provided me for 52 years now, and I feel like he's gonna keep providing, and I know he's gonna keep providing for my family. So that's my saving grace, and that's what keeps me doing what I'm doing, and the attitude I've got. That's why the way I am, I guess. So
All right. Well, Greg, thank you. I've definitely have got some questions for you a little bit later, but I'm going to come back
okay,
during the discussion time, because I do want to follow up on a couple of things, and I know some other folks may as well. But thank you for those perspectives. Wade, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, for you that came in late, John confessed that we are brothers. I'm not confessing of that. I don't want to. Really, I appreciate John so much and love him, and thankful for him. Just ironically, as Greg alluded to, the way this meeting fell out, the last time we picked peanuts were 8.5 days ago, and we probably can be picking right now, maybe. And so the first thing I want to talk about is family stress when your brother asks you to do things. I am so thankful for my family, and just give you and brag a little bit about them. My older sister retired as the chairman of the biology department at the University of Alabama, that did genetic research. She got a good bit of the brains of the family.
Agreed.
My other sister retired as an elementary school teacher, and retired some years ago, and has all kind of what were kids who are now grown come to her and tell her how much she affected their lives. And I'm so thankful and proud of Sharon. And then John he's the baby of the family. I think mom and dad found him on the doorstep, really. But he was an architect, and then he was a college administrator, and now I think he's doing probably some of the most important work of his life.
Agreed.
Needful work. And just as an aside, I taught him in school. I graduated in 74 from Georgia Southern with an education degree, and John was in one of my class. And I shouldn't probably say this, but at that time, corporal punishment was allowed. And I told John to quit talking 3 different times, and I'll just let y'all finish up that story. But it traumatized John, I think. And so
there's a lot of static right now. I can't really hear you. So
I've been, as I said, been doing this for, I think this is my 49th crop. Started in the 70s. I was just looking up some stuff about in 1980, shortly after getting started, we were growing corn and soybeans. Soybeans were bringing a really good price. We had a grain embargo, and it just really destroyed the market at that time. And we'd also gone through about 2 droughts in the late 70s. In the 80s, the interest rates predominantly were in the teens. And at the time, I was borrowing everything I could borrow to farm on, and the stress of that. And I think now some of the young guys are going through that with not interest rates in the teens, but when you have to borrow money to farm on, and then you're spending the year just in the back of your mind, you're saying, am I going to be able to pay the bank off? Am I going to have money left over for my family? And it's a tremendous stress. As Greg also said, the Lord has blessed me greatly and been able to build the business and buy some land that was affordable, that is no longer affordable. The Hyundai plant is 8 miles or so from my house, and it's a huge impact upon this entire area. It is unlikely that, except in rare cases of some farmer who has built up a lot of equity, that any of this land that is going to be selling is going to go into a farmer's operation. It's astronomical what some of the sales prices are. I guess that's good if you're selling land. I don't intend to, but it's a stress that we have young farmers trying to come in and build an operation, and they have fewer acres to work with, as also Greg alluded to. The uncontrollables, I think, is you could put that word out there. My son graduated with a construction management degree, and he came back and farmed with me for 5 years, and just elected not to continue because primarily of his personality and the uncontrollables. It is a real thing that you go into this business knowing that from the time, not even before you plant the seed until you harvest it, there are just almost unlimited uncontrollables. Last year we had a hurricane, a tropical storm, and had 2 dry periods in between all that. This year we've had our challenges with weather. So weather is always, I mean, farmers back to the beginning of time they've had their battles with the uncontrollable of weather. And then you have government intervention and government policies. Regardless of how, I don't want to get into the politics, but tariffs have an impact on my business. Cotton, for instance, I'd been quoting that when I started in cotton in '93, we milled 80% of the cotton in this country and spun the fibers and made clothes. 80% of the cotton we grew stayed here. It is more than that now is exported. 89% of the cotton we grow has to find a home outside of this country. That is a really bad situation, because we become then dependent on foreign governments, foreign policies, as well as our own governmental policies. It's an added stress factor. Our markets, we try to market ahead. We try to capture price when the market offers it to us in forward contracts, but we haven't been able to do that in cotton at all this year. It's at least 10 cents, perhaps 15 cents under our cost of production. So that's a stress factor. The cost of equipment, the just general running of the farm, labor is definitely an issue. And again, the Hyundai plant, or Hyundai, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right. They start people at $27, $30 an hour. That's very hard to make that work in the farm economy right now. So those are all issues that we deal with. Again, as Greg alluded to and spoke forthrightly about, I think two things are really helpful, and that is having peers that you can talk to. I enjoy talking to Greg, and he is very helpful to me. I have another friend who coincidentally is named Wade, and we talk almost every day, and we try to end we don't do this consciously, but we almost end every meeting, every talk that we have on the phone with, well, it's going to be all right. And it is going to be all right, but there may be a lot of short-term pain before it becomes all right. And you have to be prepared to go through that. And then the matter of faith is a real thing. It is a psychological thing. It is a heart thing. And it sustains us when things don't go the way we want it to go. And I echo Greg's comments. I just don't see how you can farm without that faith factor being involved. You ask about how important is this work. I send John, and he probably sees them before I send the articles to him, but AgWeb almost once a month has a mental health article of some kind that they're putting out there for farmers. And just the frequency of it is an indication of the depth of the problem. That more and more of ag publications are writing about this stress that it is so prevalent in our industry right now. And so I think it's very important. The whole nature of farming in a way is self-sufficiency. We pride ourselves in self-sufficiency, being self-sufficient. And in times of stress, that can help get through difficult times, but it can also be a detriment for you confessing that I can't handle this and I need help. And we are very hesitant as farmers to ask for help. And so I appreciate John's work and all you other people who are working in this field. Keep doing what you're doing. You're having an impact. But it is such a needful thing. And I'll just stop there.
All right, Wade, thank you so much. I appreciate those words, and just I can't think of another group of folks that are more worthy of our help and appreciation. All right. Again, some follow-up questions coming up. Nicole, would you get us started, please? And yep, tell us a little bit about your background too.
All righty. Well, first off, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you guys today. Excuse me, I am a little hoarse, but we're doing okay. So my background is primarily in counseling. I do a lot of work in substance use, working with veterans, mental health care, and working with veterans in the farming communities. I actually sit on the board of the Georgia chapter of the Farmer Veteran Coalition. And so we're working to develop and house all the resources, or as many of the resources we can, for Georgia farmers and veterans in the state. And so that includes agricultural related resources, but also mental health as well as veteran benefits in the area. And so my background is that, but I also am a beginning farmer that is a first generation farmer. So I didn't have the legacy as some of you all mentioned. And so that was something that I really struggled with, but I can also echo the sentiments that community has been a really big part of my journey to farming and beginning to
We're knocking that building out. I didn't know how it was gonna be.
beginning to be able to start the farm and do all of those things. And so I've also noticed that my faith is a big part of my life. And so I came to farming after I graduated from undergrad, and I wanted something that was similar to the military. And so I wanted something that I could utilize those skills, utilize those analytical skills, but also be grounded and give back. A big part of why I went to grad school was because I wanted to give back to the communities that have molded me into who I am. And so I live in North Georgia. I'm in Bartow County. And so we are looking to start our farm in Walker County, though. And so a big problem that we've run into is not really knowing where to start. And so we did a lot of trainings, we did a lot of the educational sessions, but we really didn't know how to break into farming. And with us, we didn't know, we knew what we wanted to farm, we knew what we wanted to raise, but we didn't know how to really go about finding the resources. And so I was able to do a lot of the research online, USDA and things like that, and going to the UGA extension trainings. But for some people who don't know how to access those things, or they don't know that those exist, it's a big part is land access and education access and training. Because farming is not one of those things you can jump in head first and be successful at it automatically. It's something that takes time and patience and endurance. And you've got to be able to learn from both your mistakes, but also learn from the people who've been in it a little bit longer than you guys. And so having that community is definitely essential, I believe, to farming. And so as a counselor and clinician on that end, I do see the substance use and suicidal ideation and things like that related to farming. And so that also being able to both understand from breaking into farming, but also being able to understand from the educational and clinician standpoint as well, helped me to really empathize and seek out ways to bring those resources to the farmers where they are. And so when you bring those resources to them, it's also about not just bringing the resources, but formulating them in a way that they understand. And so that's a big part of the reason that I appreciate this GAWA and all the work that Dr. McElvin does, because he's doing that. He's bringing the information to the farmers and having the different kinds of industry leaders coming on each month to be able to present is a way that I found out a lot of information about different connections and things like that, especially with the UGA Ag Extension. So I didn't know that existed prior to coming to some of these meetings and things like that. So I'm really grateful for that. Um, but on the clinical side, it does get to be more of a burden when you don't have those resources or you don't know how to access those resources. As opposed to when you know you were raised in farming and you were raised in agriculture and things like that. And so there are still similar challenges for both, especially if you want to change ag specific industries. So for example, you were raised on a cattle operation, but now you want to go into goats and pigs, or you want to go into row crops and things like that. It can be a challenge because of learning something new, but then it's also important to think about those external factors and have those protective factors of faith, community, family, resources, and really just knowing who you can reach out to. So a big part of the thing that I do with the FVC is mentorship. And so pairing people with mentors that have been in the industry a lot longer, or and pairing them with beginner farmers and things like that to help kind of bridge some of that gap. So okay, I think that's all that I have. I know that that was pretty short, but I hope that really explained what you were looking for, Dr. McElvin.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting, Nicole, for you to kind of share that perspective of somebody that wants to get into farming, and of course tying that in with your background as now a counselor and as a veteran, and appreciate that. I don't know that everybody knows this, but there are over 7,300 veterans that farm in Georgia. So I think that's a wonderful thing, and we've done some special emphasis on that. And next month, talking with the folks that are involved in agribility, which work with have some sort of disability, often a physical disability, that need help in their farming operation. So we're going to feature that next month. And have Kyle Haney and some other folks from UGA are going to be talking there. And I guess I have to say, and I appreciate the kind words about the work we're doing, but there's so many folks, our founding partners. Of course, I'm out of the Mercer University School of Medicine, and their special emphasis on rural health. And I'm a program of the Rural Health Innovation Center, but our partners at the Georgia Department of Agriculture and the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health, UGA Extension, Georgia Farm Bureau, Georgia Foundation for Ag, are all coming at this from different angles and really trying to support these critical conversations. And I want to start, I want to go back. Wade and Greg, you both talked about that sort of sometimes that lack of generational continuity. And so you did a good job articulating what that means to you and to the younger generations and all that. I wonder what you thought about sort of the implications, because a lot of times folks that are not involved in agriculture, do you feel like there are implications for our national security and our and consumer impact on consumers and consumer prices and all, in sort of looking at that trajectory of that lack of continuity? Do you think there's some impacts there that folks culture should be aware of and should be really? Greg?
I definitely think that there's a national security issue. I mean, anytime you import anything, FDA, we have strict guidelines on what we can spray, what we can't spray, what kind of rates we can use. Just there's a lot of restrictions on what we can do, and those restrictions aren't there in other countries. And you don't necessarily know what you're getting. Products that the USDA and the EPA say, well, you're not using them, and these are dangerous. They can have long-term effects. Well, they can regulate that on what we're doing, but they can't regulate that on what's coming in. And there's a lot of chemicals I know in other countries that are used that we cannot use here, because of the safety concerns. So I do think it's a very serious issue, as far as national security goes. I don't think the United States wants to be in a position where we can't provide food in our own country. We have to depend on somebody else to send it to us. That would be a very bad situation, in my opinion.
Wade, kind of same sort of question. What do you think when people are who aren't necessarily involved in agriculture? Do you see impacts that are part of basic of this lack of generational continuity and the landing?
I think
you're trying to get established. What are some of the things that are happening, or what do you think those implications are for our nation?
Well, it's huge, and I don't think the general population is aware of the fact that more than half of the farmers in the country today are over 65 years of age. I'm pretty sure that stat is correct. It's in that ballpark. So what does that mean? That means that a lot of farms, in one way or the other, operations are fixing to change hands. They're about to change hands. I mentioned that I'm 49 years into this, and let me give you another huge stress factor. If you do not have a family member or someone else who is going to come in and take over your operation, and you have to put that operation basically to rest, you have to stop it. That is a overwhelming. There are 1,000 decisions you have to make, and I'm trying to make that decision. This may be my last year, and I've got to work through all the tax implications. I've got to work through just the emotional implications of stopping doing what I've done and love to do for 5 decades. How do you work through that? Well, I'm working through it, but it takes time. And I'm one of perhaps millions across the country who are facing that same issue today. And the other factor is, because we're in such a down cycle, if I stop farming, then I've got to get rid of a pretty high dollar amount of equipment. Well, it's a very depressed market right now. So I've got to decide, well, do I just sell it for what I can get for it? Do I hold on to it? I mean, all these kind of factors come into play for the continuity of farms. And what's going to happen because of the equipment costs, because of the tight margins, it's going to be fewer. I'm a relatively small farmer at about 1,100, 1,200 acres. I'm probably not, I mean, I'm kind of like a bumblebee, you know. How does a bumblebee fly? It doesn't look like it could possibly fly. A 1,100 acre farm in row crop production doesn't look like it could fly, and it perhaps cannot fly to start off with. And I'll just, to Nicole's statement about being a first generation farmer, I basically was that also, and Greg was that also. Greg didn't grow up being, you know, had a big farm operation behind him, but he's built a tremendous operation, and I have a good operation, but I'm not sure. I feel for you, Nicole, trying to start an operation in the present climate, and I hope, and I know you can do it, but it's a challenge now to start an operation. And then we have the problem of continuity.
You still there, Wade?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, John.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, go ahead.
No, I just I'm about done. I just yeah, it's I mentioned my son, and I didn't really finish that. He's back in construction, got his own business, and he's doing well. But he just decided farming in the way I was doing it was not what he could handle. And so and he may come back into it in a different way after I quit with some of the land I have, but I'm not sure how all that's going to work out. Continuity is a huge thing, and there is a tsunami of change coming in the agricultural industry with changeover of operations in one way or the other, either in the cessation of them or in the turning over of them to another generation, if there is another generation who wants to take it over.
Yeah, thank you for that, Wade. Nicole, and I think you know this because I've shared this in sessions that you've been in that I presented. You talk about and Wade mentioned first generation farmers as well. We know that first generation farmers, farmers in general in Georgia have and this is hard to hear, but have a suicide rate that is 3.5 times the general population. And we know that suicidal ideology among first generation farmers is almost twice what it is for the average farmer. So, Nicole, when you've been sort of looking at this, starting that, I mean, can you see some of the reasons why that might be true as somebody that's really trying to break into farming?
Yeah, I can see that for sure. So going back to when I was in my master's, suicidality and substance use were things that I really studied a lot. I did external research on and those types of things. And so looking at just the stressors, as we mentioned, the government shutdown, the tariffs, and those types of things are really felt by the farming community, but they're even more felt by those beginning farmers as well, just because of like they don't know what to do in those situations. So for them, if they have a mentor, they can go to that mentor. But for those that don't, not knowing what to do is a big source of stress, of added stress, including the barriers to land access and all of the other things that come with being a beginner farmer. So yes, those I can see it being super high as and almost double for new beginning farmers for sure.
Yeah, I remember our first conversation, Nicole, at the Georgia Young Farmers chapter in Walker County, and you told me that you were a beginning farmer, and you were also graduating, just about to graduate at the time with your counseling degree, and I think I made a little comment that said, "Well, that counseling degree is going to come in really handy if you're trying to be a farmer too," and. She was very gracious to laugh at my attempt at humor there. But I think there's a lot of truth in that. I wanted to point out, thank you for that, Nicole. I wanted to point out a couple of things. Tara Haskins with AgriSafe commented that this lack of continuity is hard on U.S. production, and U.S. food production is part of our national security. It absolutely is. And Tara, by the way, is with AgriSafe, and AgriSafe is a national organization that's doing a lot. And in fact, somebody called me this morning and asked for sources of information so they could learn more about mental health among agriculture on the national scene and different programs and things like that. Somebody that was with an organization connected to agriculture. And so I recommended AgriSafe as a really big source of that. And of course, our own website, but AgriSafe does so many nice programming. And and also Vanessa Sims from Department of Ag, who's our chief contact there, and just somebody who is wonderful, commented how much she appreciated everybody's comments. Vanessa is over the emergency management at Department of Ag, and just is a person who has just been so invested in the well-being and trying to respond with support. And as we learn from different, weather events, which Wade talked about that, and I think Greg too, about that sort of being at the mercy of the weather, they are doing more and more to try and be even more responsive than they already have been. And I appreciate Department of Ag so much. Thank you, Vanessa, for what you do. So I'm going to open it up at this point. We've got some time for questions or comments. You can either put those in the chat, or you can just jump in, unmute and jump in.
I just
All
want to say thank you, Greg and both Wade, giving those details about peanut production and cotton. I was down around Lafayette, Louisiana this past weekend and saw half fields of cotton, was wondering how the cotton farmers were faring. We spoke to USA Rice, the individuals at USA Rice, and apparently they have a lot of concerns within rice production. So, you know, I know that different commodities have different issues, but there's certainly a common thread that seems to be across the board for all the commodities, with regards to, you know, what do we do with our product? So please, you know, if AgriSafe could ever, if you belong to a commodity organization, if AgriSafe could ever help you with any programming or anything, just reach out to me. I'll put my email in there, but you can find me at AgriSafe. I'm there. So thank you though for your thoughts and your comments about the struggles that you're experiencing.
Yeah, thank you, Tara. I just she and Natalie Roy, who's the CEO at AgriSafe, do marvelous work. I was privileged recently, a couple of weeks ago, to be interviewed on WABE in Atlanta about farm stress, and as part of their Suicide Prevention Month, and was joined by Natalie Roy of AgriSafe on that interview, and she's just a tremendous. I felt like the doofus in the room compared to you know, to Natalie, but it was great to be on there with her and the way she articulates these issues. Other questions, comments?
Yes, Mike, this is Mike Reynolds with Hero Agriculture.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, so we've seen a pretty significant uptake in our numbers. If you kind of think back to last year, I served the same number of veterans in the first quarter of this year as I did the entire last year. And that, which is a pretty significant you know, increase in number of veterans that we're helping. One of the things that we've done is in the past 60 days, we've been working with an organization called Warriors Heart. They are a PTSD and substance abuse program that's out in Bandera, Texas. We have sent, I think, 9 veterans to that program in the last 60 days. And according to them, that's more referrals, you know, successful referrals than Warriors, or than Wounded Warrior, Warrior Alliance, and the Semper Fi Fund, all 3 combined. So that's a lot of veterans. But as those guys get done with that and come out of those programs, then a lot of them will be networking into the farming community. Some of them have farms, some of them don't. Some of them have families that have farms, things like that. And so we'll be able to be doing some of that. We've designed a 10 by 10 chicken coop. And a lot of them will be doing some in-home chickens, you know, just kind of chickens and raised beds in the backyard. But they'll also be working with some of our larger poultry producers here, you know, in the community, just learning about chickens and that kind of stuff.
Well, thanks for that, Mike. I know your organization does a lot of good work, and you're based up in, is it Calhoun, that area, or is it somewhere up in there?
Yeah, we're in Calhoun.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate what you all do, and you know, and we know that substance misuse and abuse is one of the ways that a lot of unfortunately too many of our farmers are using that as a way to kind of deal with this stress. And so we certainly appreciate what organizations like Mike's and the Georgia Recovery Council and our faith leaders throughout the state do to do that, as well as our mental health providers. Just talking with Tracy Pace, the president of the Georgia licensed or professional Georgia Licensed Professional Counselors Association, who's here at Sunbelt today and who is also part of a farm in Effingham County. And they're trying to do a lot more to educate their members about these issues so they can do a better job serving our rural communities. Other comments or questions? Mike, I think there's a question there from Tara. It was asking if that's Warrior's Heart in Bandura.
Yeah, it's Warriors. Well, so the way that kind of works is back back I guess 10 years ago, Bernie Marcus and Arthur Blank went to a meeting with Wounded Warrior, and Wounded Warrior told them what they were going to let them do. And when you take two type A billionaires and put them in the same room and tell them what you're going to let them do, usually doesn't sit well. And so they left there and they developed two organizations. They developed the Warrior Alliance, which is based there at the Battery in Atlanta, and it's a nationwide program. And then they also created the Avalon Action Alliance. Avalon Action Alliance is not really not really someplace that you could go to, you know. They're kind of a seed pot of money. And so when you have referrals through Avalon, then that makes you eligible to go to other programs for free. It costs about $42,000 for a veteran to go through Warrior's Heart. And so if you have an actual Avalon referral, then that's actually, you know, taken care of after their insurance pays or whatever pays, you know. And so it just makes it freer, or, you know, or just makes it free. It's 42 to 12-month program, 42 day to 12-month program. And then we work with Renewed Hope up in Murphy, North Carolina, which is a 12-month program. And it's also free.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Any other questions for our producers and speakers today? I've got one more, but I'm going to defer that until I want everybody to have a chance to ask questions.
I would just like to ask Michael if he could put for Hero Ag, if you could put in the chat, like maybe a link if you have a website or your contact. I'd be interested in reaching out to you later. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for asking that, Tara. Yeah, I want to. So let me ask, Greg and Wade. You both talked about having conversations and the importance of that. Can you talk a little bit more about that and why those conversations are so important, and maybe why sometimes conversations that really need to be had aren't being had?
Wow, I mean, there's about 40 different answers to that. I think I was just thinking as people were talking, and you know, if you see a fellow farmer who previous to today has been a person who expresses humor from time to time, and then all of a sudden they do not, or if they have been at meetings, and then all of a sudden you notice they're not going to these meetings anymore. What's happening is I think, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I think too often in farming, our sense of self-worth is bound up in how well our farm is doing. And if our farm is not doing well, then our sense of self-worth plummets. And it expresses itself in isolationism and just this pessimism. These conversations that you can have with a trusted peer who's been through the fire, so to speak, and has weathered it is just invaluable. Because you're sitting there saying the world's coming to an end, and they will tell you, no, it's not coming to an end. And you work your way through it and you live to fight another day. I know that the whole suicide thing, because we have that in my wife's family, it comes unexpected. Sometimes there's just no signs of it, but sometimes there are. And in farmers' situation, when there's such a radical change of behavior, that's a bad sign. These conversations, whether it's me and Greg talking, and I'm just saying, Greg, are you going to be able to pick today? Because I'm thinking we can, and I'm hoping we can. You say, well, that's a minor thing. Well, it's a huge thing, because we've been down for 8.5 days and we have a ton of money out there in that field, and we need to get it back and hopefully have a profit. So those conversations are very important. Greg, I'll just turn it over to you.
I agree. Just to be able to, like I think we both commented earlier, we're not the only ones going through this. Everybody in this industry is going through the same thing. Now, it may be different for somebody who's farming 9,000 acres versus farming 1,000 acres. But in the end, it's all relevant to where you're at. But just to be able to, talk to some of your peers that are farming and say, hey, I'm like Wade said, are we picking? By the way, Wade, we just started. We are picking today. So now we lifted them yesterday, but we are picking today. But yeah, I think just bouncing ideas off each other, because you may have a problem that somebody else has been through that your friends can answer that, well, this is what I did, and you may not have thought of that answer. You may not have thought of that avenue to handle a situation. But one of them, this time of the year when you're trying to harvest what you've produced, and I'm sure Wade feels the same way. The last 7 to 8 days have just been miserable. I mean, you're sitting there and you're hoping everything's gonna, the crop's gonna be fine. It's, there's not gonna be any quality issues with it sitting there so long, and but just the fact that you can't do anything, and when you can't do anything, then your mind is on what you can't do, and when you're on a piece of machinery, that's probably the most, for me, being on a piece of machinery and operating a piece of machinery and harvest is the biggest stress reliever I can have. I mean, just to be able to harvest, to be able to know that you're getting something done that's going to help, in the end of the situation. And it's just that's just huge to me, to be able to get out there and just work. When you can't work, I know that sounds crazy, but when you can't work, that's when the stress really, for me, really kicks in, is when I can't do anything. And there's, I'm just sitting there thinking about what I do need to be doing, and to be able to talk to, anybody and everybody's in the same situation, and just being able to, I guess be disgruntled together even helps,
Yeah, thanks for that. All right, well, I always promise we're going to keep this to an hour, and we're closing in on that. Any last quick thoughts? Anybody? Yes, Greg's got his therapy animal there.
Yeah, this is my therapy animal. He's been with me every day for 10 years now, and
that's a good looking dog.
He listens a lot. He takes a lot of the venting and all, but and truly that they are very good at stress relief. Animals are. So yeah, like I say, 10 years. I'm just glad he can't talk sometimes.
Yeah. Listen, I want to say thank you so much to Greg and Wade and Nicole for, I think this has been one of our best sessions, and it's so great to hear directly from producers, and in Nicole's case, a counselor, to talk about these issues, and really appreciate it. Like I said, next month we'll be doing a special emphasis on agribility, that program, with Kyle Haney from UGA. And we're looking forward to that. That's going to be on Veterans Day, so we're going to do a special emphasis on veterans and in agriculture with disabilities. So, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll hope to see you online next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. See ya.
Thank you.